Hey, it's Rob. Welcome to the Everyday Investor, the hottest real estate investment show in the world. That's right. I said it. I don't care who knows it. We've got a great show lined up because I've got veteran investor Ray Ostrander on the show with me. I'm so excited. We also have a client of his as well who's showing us how he's making money investing in real estate. We're going to talk today about buying a property, fixing it up, pulling money out of it, and then holding it, renting it out. There's a lot of money to be made that way. Ray is a wealth of knowledge, done tons of different investment vehicles. Whenever you're asked, I want to remind us all, whenever you're presented rather with an investment, you always want to ask those four questions. Number one, what is the return on my investment? Number two, when do I get that return? Number three, what's the minimum cash amount needed? And number four, you look them right in the eye and you ask them, what is the risk? Because there's always risk in life. I can be driving down the highway. If I don't know what I'm doing, I can, cross the medium, all that kind of stuff. Always risk. And so knowledge mitigates that risk. The more knowledge we have, we can mitigate it. But there's always risk in life, right? It's great to see you on the show.
Yeah, good to be here.
What do you think of that sentiment right off the top? That nothing in life is guaranteed. There's always potential for risk, but when we know what we're doing, we're good.
Yeah, I mean, I feel comfortable today being able to leverage a lot of that. When we talk about risk, if I'm comfortable with the process, I don't mind to leverage a little bit. In real estate, it's pretty tried and true when you know what you're doing.
Yeah, when you know what you're doing. So listen, I always say that God made a few perfect heads in the world. The rest he covered with hair.
That's right.
So that's why you're on the show, because you are a smart, bald-headed friend of mine. But no, I'm just kidding, Ray. Thank you so much. You're like a brother to me, a mentor. I'm so grateful to have you on here. You've been doing this for a long time. You're like me in our mid-40s, but a few decades you've been rocking and rolling with the whole investment world.
About 15 years.
About 15 years, yeah. And so now are you exclusively coaching and teaching other people how to kind of do the same thing? What are you up to these days?
I've done a lot of training for years, different speaking engagements and things like that, but also doing some of my own private mentoring.
Yeah.
But mostly what we do, is invest. That's what you do. You have a show, but you're an investor.
Yeah, you're absolutely an active investor, and that's what makes you, that's why somebody would want to learn from you, because it's not like, hey, I've done this 15 years ago and now I can teach you. You're actively investing.
I think what a lot of people don't realize is there's a lot more money to be made in investing than there is in teaching people how to invest. And I think that's some of the challenge that when you look at some of the organizations out there that do training, a lot of people go in and think, these guys, they're making so much money off this. I think most people who do training, hopefully they have a genuine desire to help people.
Yeah.
And believe me, you're making a lot more money on your investments than you ever are training somebody else how to invest and compete with you.
Yeah.
Right?
No, that's a great point. And of course, but it does make sense if you're going to offer that wealth of knowledge that you should also be paid a little bit for that as well. So you're making more money in your investments, but you're making a couple bucks coaching as well, and you should. Otherwise, you're taking away from your girl, you're taking away from your children, you're taking away from, so on and so forth, which what I appreciate about you, really, and I make sure that all my guests that kind of co-host with me are on the same playing field, is that you care more about bigger picture, spiritual matters, family matters, relationships. Your kids are everything to you. Money, whether we have it or not, it's not the most important thing. It sure can help.
Sure.
But talk a little bit about the impetus of why we're playing this investing game in the first place.
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest challenge when I started was I was working as a pastor. I wasn't making a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I knew I needed to do something different. So I just wanted to make sure I had enough cash to be able to service my lifestyle. And it got to the place where I realized I could make a lot more money doing the investing and then kind of volunteer and do other things I wanted to do.
Some benevolent things, and sure.
Yeah. So as I got into training other people and teaching people, I think it was important to understand there is a sacrifice that's made when you want to learn how to do something. And you may pay $25,000, $30,000 to go through very expensive training programs. But when you're doing that and you're making that investment of money and time, what is your return on the other side? For me, it's the ability to pick up my kids after school. It's the ability to come out here in the middle of the day and do a show with you, or spend some time with a client, or whatever it is. It's nice to have that freedom, that luxury.
Right. Yeah.
I feel very fortunate. I think I've had some very good luck or good fortune through this.
Yeah.
I've also worked very hard, and it's all based on what my mentors and my trainers taught me, is how to do this in a way to manage risk and look for the kinds of deals where there's more margin, where a lot of people don't want it. So the properties I'm buying, they need work. And I know that's some of the topic we're talking about. They need work. Sometimes it's with the tenants you got to work with, challenges there, or the building itself. So we take on things that are maybe undesirable to other people, and have a basic process to be able to go through and make that successful.
Last week we talked about, investing in mortgages and, you're writing a check and some passive income comes through. The week before we talked about land development, partnering with a developer, you're writing a check. And, in the mortgage world, you make your whatever, 10, 11%. And in land development, you can make a little bit more. But when you're doing what you were talking about today and what you're well versed in, you can make, 80, 90, 100, 200%, but there's perspiration that goes into that. So we're going to cut to a break here, but when we come back, I really look forward to learning, and for the viewers at home to learn this whole concept of buying, fixing it up. Now you've increased the value, pulling money out so we can almost be in for almost nothing, then renting it out, and we've got some cash flow, and that's how you've made a lot of your money. So we're very excited to have Ray Ostrander on the show. You definitely don't want to miss this. I'm so excited. I'm stumbling on my words. Get your pen, your paper, your calculator, all that kind of good stuff. The Everyday Investor continues in a moment. Whenever you're considering to invest in real estate, always ask those 4 questions. Number 1, what's the return on investment? Number 2, when do I get that return along with the money that I put in? Number 3, what is the minimum cash amount needed? And number 4, what is the risk in the worst case scenario? Hey, you're watching The Everyday Investor. We're talking to my good friend Ray about how to make money investing in real estate. Before we do that, we'll go to our mortgage specialist extraordinaire, Carmen Capernero. Over to you, Carmen.
Thanks, Rav. Okay, well, today I want to talk to all of you out there that are looking for financing, that's having a very challenging time with the banks. We can offer private money as an alternative. Now, a lot of people get shocked with, oh no, private money is too expensive and it's not something I should do. Well, if you take a look at the big picture and how lending with banks has really handcuffed so many people in the industry today, you can resort to private money and think about the quick turnaround with private money and how that can make you a lot of money. Now, you may have to pay 6 to 8% interest on a first mortgage with private money. However, can you imagine how many more deals you can do? So if you're discouraged, you're getting declined from the bank because you can't show your income, check it out. Private money might be your answer. Thanks, Rav. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Carmelita. Always great to hear from you. Ray, I know you're a fan of this. I mean, I know that you borrow private money. And so explain to the viewers at home a little bit about, even if you could go and get, money today at 3-4%, sometimes you're willing to pay 8, 9, 10, 11% short term to be able to get into a deal. Why would somebody do that?
This is a very timely discussion because when you're talking about buying and fixing up a property, today I exclusively am doing things more on the commercial residential side, so just larger buildings, 6 units and up, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so when you get into a mortgage like that, if you get into a 5-year fixed term, the penalties are outrageous. You're going to pay the full interest for the whole term. Maybe you're better off to pay a little bit more up front so that you can use less of your own money.
That's a great point.
So
if I get it from the conventional way, I might have to pay over 5 years. If I borrow, it might be just a 6-month, 1-year term.
6 month, 1 year, and more importantly, let's say that you buy a place for $600,000.
Yeah.
And if you buy a place for $600,000, and the bank, an A lender, only wants to give you 80% loan to value, so you're getting, I don't know if that's 540, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, 480, and then I have to come up with my own 120.
Right, which is great.
Yeah.
But if you've got to come up with money to fix that property as well, so you're not putting in your
and
money,
the bank doesn't give me money necessary to do that.
and you can't refinance for 5 years. You can, but the penalties will be outrageous.
Yeah.
So you go to someone like Carmen, and they can set you up with different things. Now, I've worked with Carmen. Carmen actually did a deal for me a few years back that I couldn't have done without some of that private money. And I paid 9.95%, plus I think I paid a couple points for that money, but it was open, and I could refinance it at any time. Now I increased the value of the property, so now if the property's worth $1 million, now I can go back and get $800,000, pay out the first mortgage, pay back what I needed for my renovations,
Great
end up
point.
with some cash in my pocket.
So what you're saying, just to slow down here, and I don't have my board here, but we'll have it in the next segment to be able to write it down.
Sure.
What Ray is suggesting is that if we're going to buy a property for $600,000, we need 20%. Well, I may have that 20%, which is $120,000, and the bank will lend me the other $480,000. But the whole point of this strategy is to buy it, but then fix it up. So I may need it $100,000.
Yeah.
So now we're in for $700,000, but I may need $100,000 to fix this property up, which the bank's not going to give me. So you could, Ray, borrow it from Rav. Rav will give you that $100,000 for a year. I'll charge you 10%. So you're going to pay me back $110,000. It's good for Rav.
Yeah.
But now Ray has paid only $10,000 of interest, but has increased that property $100,000, $150,000, $200,000.
Yeah.
So that's what you're suggesting why people like you do this all the time.
Again, working with a specialist, someone like Carmen, she was able to go out there and find me a lender who would lend based off the repaired value, the future value
The
of the property.
future value, got it.
So now I'm able to even finance the fix-ups that I need to do on the property with very little in my pocket, which we know improves our return on investment.
Yeah, fantastic. I love that. So basically what we're doing, and the reason why this is a little bit of a different strategy, is because conventionally, people buy a property that's kind of known as turnkey. Explain a little bit what that means, a turnkey property.
A lot of people might want to buy a property, and I think of this when I hear that term, more of like a smaller residential property, maybe a duplex, triplex, fourplex, something in that range.
Or even just a condominium, like just even in a building.
I'm not a huge fan of those just because there's usually not enough income to support all the expenses and the debt service. But if you're buying a property that's already tenanted, ready to go, doesn't really need any work, and it's just kind of flowing, right? Everything's good, turnkey. You get in, you don't really have to do anything to that property.
So that's what the turnkey means, and you're not opposed to it. You make your cash flow. It goes up passively. If it was $400,000, next year it might be $415,000. It goes up that way. But what you're saying is, well, why not make more on the forced appreciation, making it better? So you'll take the most decrepit property you could find, if you will, in a good area for $400,000. Do a lot to it. And now you've significantly improved the value.
So there's a range, right? I think some people are well suited to go in, and their abilities, as well as maybe their risk tolerance and appetite for dealing with bad tenants and bad situations, may be low. A turnkey operation is a great way to go, and you can make a lot of money doing that, and you're going to pay a premium for it. On the other side, you can go to that decrepit property in a good neighborhood and do a lot there. For me, I tend to come in probably in the middle of that range. And I focus on
more lipstick and more kind of a makeover, if you will.
Exactly, cosmetic repairs to that property primarily, and in many cases getting it tenanted. If a property is tenanted and it's making money and it's in reasonable condition, what circumstances is the seller going to want to sell that property? It's not going to be the case that they're really motivated. I like to buy from motivated sellers, so I tend to get a better price. So if I want to find someone where I can get a good deal, I'm looking for something that maybe they have a need. And if that property is running really well, I think they deserve to be paid for that. So I look for stuff that has a problem either on the property itself.
I'm already feeling coached, Mr. Ostrander. I already love this. So what Ray does, we buy a property, kind of middle of the range. It needs cosmetics. It needs the new carpets, the paint, the light fixtures, everything, the things that you touch, all that kind of stuff. That can significantly improve the value, and then we pull back out from the bank, and you're going to teach us how to do that. Is there certain areas, like you say, this won't work. It doesn't make sense if it's already a great property. It's not going to work in an area where everything's great, and it might be turnkey, it might be already tenanted, and you may enjoy a little bit of the cash flow and the debt reduction, somebody paying your mortgage, and it goes up, passively, just above inflation generally you should kind of bank on. And that's good, and people can make their 20, 30% annualized kind of returns, although it's not liquid, it's not like it's cash coming out, 20, 30%, but when you put all those factors in place. So the first question that we always ask is what could be the return on my investment? So when we're talking about the type of properties that you do, Ray, I know it's hard, every property is different, but generally speaking, if you're not going to make a return of what, you won't kind of touch it. What do you
30% and up. I have to qualify that. That's a ridiculous number. But we're talking about the less money I put down on these deals, the better my return on investment is going to be. And when I have banks that are willing to lend on these properties, they're lending because they believe it's a solid investment. And in many cases, I'll use CMHC to insure that loan, and I may get a low interest rate. So recently we did a deal like There was 6 different buildings.
When you say CMHC, what you're saying is to insure the loan is that sometimes you still have to put the 20% down or no?
Well, now I'm talking about commercial stuff, which is more what I do. You might be putting down 30, 35, 40% in some cases on the deals that I do. But if you want to get CMHC to insure it, you got to pay a premium for it.
Yeah.
And you can take the loan to value higher.
But you get a preferred rate.
You're also going to get a better rate. So I mean, I locked, I think this was a month and a half ago, we closed on 6 different buildings.
Yeah.
And the rate that we locked in was 2.13%.
Come on.
No, 2.13%.
You paid 2.13% on 6 buildings.
Individually, they were just separate deals.
Yeah, different things. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
because
fantastic.
CMHC, now I pay a premium for that.
Yeah.
But what am I paying? 3.5%? So when you really break it down,
Which gets attached to the mortgage.
that's right.
Yeah.
But my
Not
interest
out of
rate
pocket.
is probably almost a point less.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm not so much worried about that. What I'm really worried about is putting less down.
Yeah.
Because if I put less down on the property, if you're making 3% on $1 million property, you're making
$30,000.
$30,000.
Yeah.
So if you put $1 million in, you're making $30,000.
Yeah.
You're making 3%.
Yeah.
So when I'm able to put less money down, and if I'm only putting down 20%,
Yeah. 200,000.
yeah, my 3% now turns into 15% return just because I'm
right.
putting less money down.
Yeah.
So I'm not
So
necessarily.
I want to make sure the viewers at home got that. So what you're saying is, anytime, if we give a very conservative increase on the property of 3%, anytime you put down 20%, you're making an annualized return of 15%. So, for example, if
on
we
the
buy,
appreciation.
Yeah, just on the appreciation.
Yeah.
So if we buy a $1 million property or a $100,000 property, for numbers' sake, if I buy a $100,000 property and I make $3,000 and I'm only in for $20,000, when you take the $3,000 and you divide it by what you're in for, the $20,000, that spits out a 15% return, and that's just on the inflation.
That's
we
right.
haven't talked about how you're making it better and pulling money out. We haven't talked about them paying down the mortgage, and we haven't talked about the cash flow.
Yep.
When we have one of your people here that you've mentored, Bill's going to actually come on the show. We'll take a look at that. But yeah, it's very interesting.
And what Bill's done in more of the residential area is pretty fabulous, and we'll see those numbers come up.
Yeah.
I do stuff that's a little bit different. I think for the average everyday investor, you need to think about using a little bit less of your own money to put into these deals. And in some cases, if you're in the Toronto market or larger markets, if you put less money down, we may have a negative cash flow.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily mean it's a bad deal. It just means you can't scale that up and do a lot of them, right?
Yeah.
So you can still get a 20% return, but you may have a bit of negative cash flow on a property. Nothing wrong with that. That's not what I do.
Yeah.
It's not what I do with the clients that I work with, but certainly it is absolutely a valid way to invest. It's just not my style.
What you're saying is if there's a property that's going to explode in terms of appreciation, but I'm pulling out $100 a month to make this thing work because it's not necessarily wrong to do that. Many people do it. It's just not your style because you really look for cash flow to be able to, basically.
I also can't speculate.
Yeah.
That's a bit of a speculative market. We're assuming that market's going to pop from an appreciation standpoint. For me, I need to be sure that property just chugs along because I work with partners. Partners will invest with me, and those partners have an expectation that they're going to be paid consistently. What I don't want to have to do is look at something and need the appreciation. I want the cash flow. I want the principal recapture. To me, the appreciation is more of a bonus. And if I get 1% to 2% appreciation on a property when we're leveraged like that, it's outstanding returns.
So you mentioned something right there, and I want to break that right down for a second. And I don't even know if if you're looking for more, but just because you mentioned it, partners.
Yeah.
So Rav's watching the show, and he's saying, "Wow, Ray's he's been doing this for a long time. I don't want to do any work. Either I'm really smart or really lazy. I don't know. Pick. You can pick. It doesn't matter to me. But I've got $100,000, $200,000." How does that work? Is that what you mean? You've got people that invest for you to do all the work, and then you kind of split how does it work?
Well, this is primarily when I'm working with friends or family, close business associates.
I mean, this is how Bill even, right? You're high school friends or something?
Yeah, when I grew up in Malton with him, and he used to chase me around the rink at Malton Arena.
Yeah.
And so that's where I remember Bill. He showed up at one of the trainings I was doing.
Okay.
And
now he's not necessarily a partner. He's doing this on his own, but you coached him through it.
It would be a mistake for him to be a partner, and I'm not. He knows this. He may not be working with millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
He may be trying to take smaller amounts of money, invest, do this himself.
Yeah.
But he also knows there are a lot of people out there that don't want to do the work. So if he can go in and he can work on a property with friends, family, or close business associates who he knows, they can put up the money and have to do no work. He goes in, him and Jen, they organize the fix-up of this property, turn around, refinance it, get the money out, and do another one. I mean, That's the way I think this is going to work best for him.
Well, let's stop talking about Bill and let's bring him on the show.
Sounds great.
When we come back, we're going to see what Bill Peeling's doing, investing in these kind of properties, buying, fixing, refinancing, holding, all that kind of good stuff. You don't want to miss this show. The Everyday Investor continues in just a moment. Did you know that you don't have to be a slumlord to be very profitable in residential real estate? Hey, it's Rav. Welcome back to the Everyday Investor. We're talking about how to make money, buying a property, fixing it up, taking the money out of it, so we're in for almost nothing, and then holding it, renting it out. Ray Ostrander, my guest co-host, is with me. He's done this for 10, 20 years, and we have Bill Peeling on the show as well. Bill, great to see you.
Nice to meet you.
Yes. So you are playing this investment game for how long now? How long have you been investing in real estate?
2 years, almost to the day.
2 years,
Yep.
and you belong to a network where you're learning, you're introduced to different things, you're learning from Ray. When you first saw Ray teaching this on stage, what were your initial thoughts in terms of like, wow, I never knew this, or I knew this, but Ray's making it more simple. What were your thoughts when you first saw him teach?
So my first thought was, I know this guy from somewhere.
Yeah.
And turns out we know each other from when we were kids. Second of all, he's very
And you
confident.
didn't know that when you went to this real estate seminar?
No idea.
And you were excited about the real
Actually,
estate seminar.
I got to be honest, going further back, I didn't have any confidence in this at all at the beginning because I'm similar age to you guys.
Yeah.
I'm mid-40s. I was taught to, save your money, pay your interest.
Put it under
all
the
that
mattress.
Yeah, Mom taught me well. Don't
Yeah.
get me wrong.
Yeah.
But my wife is very convincing. So she convinced me to go to this 3-day seminar, and Ray happened to be the guy. And Ray's very good at what he does, and I believe in that. And I believe in people and relationships. And
That's great.
Important.
And Bill, it's something. It's very important. I love my Rocky movies, Ray. And any great movie, if you really look at it, it's all based on relationship. So when Adrian's in the hospital in Rocky 2 and he doesn't want to fight, he at the very end, she says in the hospital bed, go. And I say that, and I'm having a little fun with it, but it's very important for us to be, if we're married, to be on the same page. Yep. And I think that's really great of your wife to be able to encourage, because nothing's worse. I mean, my wife is my greatest teacher, and then my kids. But if I really want to do something, but I don't feel like somebody's behind me, it's hard to be able to do that. But to be able to have husband and wife, or whether your wife's doing it and you support her. Yep. I mean, Ray, you deal with couples all the time. If you don't have a great synergy there, if somebody doesn't believe in it, it makes it that much harder, doesn't it? Wouldn't you say?
And Jen did a lot of the work on this deal, didn't she?
She did quite most of the work on this deal, yes.
No, that's
Yes.
fantastic. That's fantastic.
There's a really good story behind that if you got a second to hear it.
Of course you got a second to do it.
She went to see a bunch of properties. We went to see them together.
Yeah.
About 6 properties. We actually made an offer. We didn't get the property because someone else outbid us. She went to see a property one day after work, and we bid on it that night, and we got the property the next day, and I didn't even see it.
Nice.
That's how good that
Nice.
deal is.
And are we gonna look at this
That's the one
particular
we're talking
property?
about. Yeah, that's
Okay,
the one
so
we're
let's
talking
look at
about.
this property
All right.
because you are in the world of, and this is what I always say, this is where you make the most money. It's kind of like a mini development. It's not a development, but it's like a mini where you're taking something and you're changing it and making it better, so therefore it increases the value. Then you can refinance, take the money out, rent it out, so on and so forth. So we're going to talk about one of your properties, because you're in how many different investments? 4 or 5 investments?
4 or 5 different investments, but this is the only property currently we own.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
The other ones are kind of like passive, investing in
Some land,
mortgages,
mortgages.
Yes.
development, land, all that kind
Correct.
of stuff. Okay,
Yes.
great. Because we're not at the point of refinancing. We're just about to refinance, and we'll take a look at how that works. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's put the numbers up here. So you bought a property where?
In Hamilton, Ontario.
In Hamilton. It's not a bad place to buy a property.
Values are going up.
That's right. So we bought a property in Hamilton, and the purchase price on that was
$315.
$315. And what did we buy for $315?
About a duplex.
Really?
Yes.
That's a great price. When did you buy that?
A year and a half ago.
A year and a half ago.
Yes.
So, Ray, let's talk a little bit about how we find these properties. I mean, to find a duplex for $315 in Hamilton, a lot of this stuff is not on the MLS. A lot of the stuff is off. Or how do we do this?
Well, one thing is I think these guys did it right. They went out and then they looked at a lot of properties, not necessarily in person, but looked at them, saw the listings, or talked to sellers, and you have a lot of conversations. At least if you're working with a lot more options, there's law of numbers is going to come into play there. You're going to likely find a better deal on something, and they were able to negotiate something, a favorable deal with good terms.
Sounds like a great price for 2 rents, right? You had a duplex.
And a good real estate agent.
And a good real estate.
Yes.
So this was on the MLS, this particular one.
I don't think it made it that far.
It didn't make that
No,
far,
I
but
agree.
he knew that something was coming up, so this was
Yes.
not on the MLS.
Yes.
So you can use a realtor. He has to feed his family, so you pay the realtor, and he negotiates that. But it's not necessarily on the MLS. We can find better deals that way as well. Not that it's wrong to buy a property on the MLS, but a lot of times we start with talking to the hairdresser. I'm not sure if you do that, Ray, but we talk to the hairdresser, we talk to the mailman, we talk to the realtors. Hey, what's coming up? We talk to mortgage brokers.
Yeah.
What's coming up? Who needs my help to be able to get out of a property per se, right? Not to take advantage. Who can I help? Who can I help get out of their property for it to be a win-win situation?
Yes, real estate investing goes a long way when you have a realtor who does real estate investing as well. So through Ray's seminar, we met our real estate agents, and they specifically deal with real estate investors.
Cool. Who did you use? Who's your realtor?
Heddle Group. The Heddle Group. in
Heddle Group,
Hamilton.
okay.
Yeah.
Mike, right?
Fantastic.
His name's Mike?
Mike Heddle.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
The right realtor is going to make a huge difference for us, right? Because that's going to be someone who has hopefully some integrity aligned with us. There's been a lot of stuff in the news about, it's not really painting the best picture for most realtors, and that's not fair because there's a lot of realtors out there really trying to do right, but finding those realtors to go out and look for what you need. You're not just looking for a house. You're looking for something that produces income, and sometimes that realtor doesn't understand. I think Mike did a great job for you.
Yeah, great job.
Yeah, I mean, to each their own. For me, I like to use an accountant, a lawyer, a realtor. All the people on my team, I like them to be investors because there's lots that is changing every single day. You don't have to. Everybody needs to start somewhere, give the guy a chance, But for me, that's just where I feel more comfortable. It sounds like you did a great job
Exactly
here.
the same.
$315. Okay, so we did that, and how much money did we put down on this?
We put 5%, so $15,750.
Okay, so, and this is investment property.
Correct.
Okay, so how did we do that? So we put 5% down, which equals what?
$15,750.
$15,750. And so what I'm saying is, how come only 5% as opposed to the 20 or so on and so forth?
So when we were actually purchasing it, we were intending to move there.
Okay.
Kids' situation, schools, and so
Things
on.
change, life
Didn't work out.
happens,
Yeah.
so on and so forth. Okay, great.
That's how it came.
So you're 15,750. What's next? Then what do we do?
So then we have closing costs.
Yeah.
So closing costs about $8,000.
Okay.
And that's being really conservative, but
Okay.
that's pretty
So
much what it is.
$8,000. All right. So we're already 23,750. Yeah.
Yeah. So then we renovated. We
Yeah.
had some safety concerns that we wanted to make sure were good for the tenants
Yeah.
because safety is the most important thing as a.
Was it already tenanted when you bought it, or was
No,
it
it
vacant?
was vacant.
So it wasn't tenantable. Would
it
you
was,
say?
It was.
Okay.
However, safety concerns such as some electrical
Yeah.
that may be perceived as not safe in some avenues.
Yeah.
We want to make sure the smoke alarms were wired in. So stuff like that.
Yeah.
We wanted to vent out a second floor kitchen that wasn't already vented, but the kitchen existed. Some things that had to be done.
So why was it vacant? Was it tenanted, and then the seller knew he wanted to sell, so then he asked the tenants to leave, or why
It was a flip. It was a flip. So they took it from a very bad state, from what I understand,
Got it.
to a state where it was livable. However, they didn't do enough, in my opinion,
Got
or
it.
our opinion. So we
And
thought
that's
let's do
very
more.
interesting, Ray.
Yeah.
A lot of people, a lot of renovators, because they love watching the late night shows or the
Sure, yeah.
daytime shows on HGTV, and should always just be watching Rogers. But they're watching these shows. They think, hey, I can do that. And now we take advantage of a virgin renovator who really didn't do what they were supposed to be doing. So now Bill comes in.
I don't think everyone does it as well as Scott McGillivray does it, right?
That's right.
He does a great job, and I think that learning how to do that effectively is an important thing.
Yeah. Okay, great. So we're closed for that, and now we've got our rentals.
So $30,000 we put into it right away.
Okay, and this is all your own money.
All our own money
Okay, so we're $30K right in.
with a big sigh.
Okay, and what else?
So that's where it stops from an investment standpoint from our cash.
So you're done.
as far
in
as the
terms of
cash
putting your
goes.
money in. So
Yes.
all this equals
53,750.
$53,750.
Yes.
That's what Bill is in for.
Yes.
Bill and your wife's name? Jen.
Jen.
Okay, great. So you're in for $53,750. Now what?
So now, from the total cash invested, we have cash flow coming in.
Okay.
So once we get our tenants, we were very, very good at the marketing and getting tenants in even before we actually closed the sale.
Yeah.
So we had people coming looking at the property. So by day one, when we owned the property, we had 2 tenants already moving in.
Nice.
So from that, we get cash flow of about $6,100 a year.
Okay, so explain to me what cash flow, Ray.
Cash flow is how much you put into the property, the mortgage, the expenses and all that, and how much the renters pay.
Yeah.
Renters pay more than you have to pay.
Yeah.
Works out to be cash flow. In
Okay.
That's the easiest way I could put
That's
it.
the easy way. Yeah. You have expenses. You have mortgage. You have interest on the mortgage. You have insurance. You have property tax, and
Electricity.
and then you. Oh, is the utilities included in this?
Included.
So utilities included.
Yes.
And then you charge your rent, and it's good for that rent to be more than your expenses. That's cash flow.
That's cash
right. Okay. So the cash flow is what?
$6,100 a year.
$6,100 a year. So you're making just over $500 a month.
Correct.
Which is good. And then someone's paying down your mortgage. So we have our mortgage, what am I doing here? Mortgage pay down, right? So someone's paying down your mortgage. A lot of it's interest, but a portion is principal that kind of goes under your mattress, if you will. How much is that?
$9,000 a year.
$9,000 a year.
$9,000 a year.
Okay,
In
great.
principle.
Yeah,
Principal,
in principal.
yeah. Yeah.
So that's $9,000. And that's easy to find out, right? You just look at the bank statement.
Yeah.
You always see how much is interest, how much is, and you can even forecast for what the year will be. And then, are we looking at some passive appreciation?
Yes.
At all? And so
Yes.
naturally, this property goes up as well, just naturally. And what did you use for that? Conservative,
3%.
which is incredibly conservative for
Incredible.
Hamilton.
Yes.
So you're saying this property is going to go up 3%, which is about $9,000 and change. What is that?
In this case, we
12,000.
use
12,000.
you use 12,000 just because the value of the property today is about 400,000.
Yeah.
So we wanted to give an accurate number for next
Still
year.
very conservative.
Yeah, 3%.
Okay, so you should put passive here. So passively, you're making 12,000 here, and I want to add to the viewers at home. So far, the real money is the $6,100. It's the $500 a month. The mortgage pay down and the passive appreciation, we still are enjoying that $21,000, but it's not liquid. In real estate, it's supposed to be slow, boring. You make your money in the long run, and so the liquid part of it is the cash flow. But you did something to it. You put $30,000 worth of renos into this,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
So that is forcing the property to go up,
Yep.
correct?
Yep.
So we're forcing the property to go up, and Ray just said it. The value today is over 400,000.
About 400. About 400,000.
400,000.
Again, conservative. As an investor,
Yeah.
One thing we learned right away is be conservative in your projections.
Yeah.
So you know the outcome is usually better than projections. So
Okay.
that's what we always try to do.
Okay, so 400,000 from my 315. So you made 85,000.
Correct.
$85,000.
So 55 is the forced.
Yeah. So 55.
55 is the forced.
85.
But then I would
minus
have to take out the renos though.
Yeah. So 85 minus 30, 55.
Yeah, or I can just add it in. But is that the better way? You want me to do it that way? Okay, so what do you say? 55,000. I can leave both in or take both out.
Correct.
So I'll take out now the 30, and bring this down to 23. Is that right? Or leave the 30 in.
If I were doing it, I'd leave the 30 in.
Yeah.
You put in 30, you got out 55.
Yeah.
Right? So the return on investment, we calculated a little bit differently than when you're going through here. But
Yeah. That's fantastic. So when we add all these numbers up, what do I get?
you're gonna get $85,000 in
How much?
$85,000 in profit on the property, right?
$85,000. So what you're saying is, when I take my profit, $85,000, and I divide it by what I'm in for, $53.70. What's the ROI on that?
Is that correct? You want to do the math on that?
Yeah.
I don't think you want
Grab your
to grab
calculator.
your calculator and throw that in? I don't
Yeah,
think
yeah.
my number's the same as yours.
Okay, well, let's talk about this when we come right back from the break.
Perfect.
And see how you're making a lot of money anyways. When we come back, we'll continue to talk to Bill about how he's making money investing in real estate. Thanks for watching. Did you know that sometimes it's better to use private money to close on commercial, renovate, and finance strategies? Hey, it's Rav. Welcome back to the Everyday Investor. We're talking to my good friend Ray. We're talking to Bill about how he's making money investing in real estate. We're going to continue that talk, Ray.
Yeah.
So we added these numbers up. It's 81,000 or something. I put down 85,000. He's in for this. So when we do the numbers on that, I mean, this return is, if you take always your profit, $85,000, divide it by what you're in for, 53,750. And that works out to, is that what you got? Almost 160% return.
153%, yes.
153% return. So here we are at equaling 153% return. Now, the reason why, and it's only going to get better after that because, we haven't even refinanced. When we refinance that, and you can talk a little bit about how that works, he's obviously going to be in for less, which increases return. But he was also able to put down 5%.
Sure.
Not everybody, necessarily can. But even if we change that number to 20% down, he's still making a fantastic return on his money.
If you take that to 20% down, you're basically looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of just under 40% return on investment.
Yeah, 40% return, and he did a little bit of cosmetics to this property. Right.
They did
It was
a great
already
job.
ready to go the way it was. He did a little bit of cosmetics, raised the rent, all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah. I think what's really important about this deal as part of the theme for the show is when he went through and did this, he was able to force appreciation. This is where it can get kind of tricky. Is when you see a property appreciate $85,000, was that all because of the renovation they put in? Probably not. There's some appreciation. Well, how much is passive? How much is forced? That market's been going gangbusters. So
it might take 3-4 months to appreciate, to do the work. But passively, just naturally, it increases anyways.
And that market naturally right now is higher than normal. So he's had a great. There's been a great. He's got a good fortune, and it's also been a great deal he's done. And then most importantly is the next step, which is where he's going to go ahead and refinance this property. There's equity in it. How can he refinance it and take it up to a higher amount?
So let's talk about the conventional way to refinance. So the conventional way to refinance is you take a look at the value of your property. The bank today wants us to keep 20% in. Right? So if this property you're saying is $400,000, then the bank wants us to have at least $80,000 of equity.
That's correct.
But it doesn't mean my mortgage is $320,000. My mortgage now could be $220,000.
In this case, his mortgage is $290,000.
$290,000.
That's what he's paid it down to.
Okay.
And for him, he's looking to try and get the entire amount out. Well, that can be challenging if you're wanting to go through a traditional lender. In his case, he's decided to go and talk to someone who's at arm's length. From a mortgage, from their RSP. And he's not going to get a full up to 100% loan to value.
No, he's not.
But he's going to get about $60,000 out.
Okay, so let's see this unconventional. So if it's worth that $400K, I've got to leave 80 in. Okay, so I've got to leave 80 in. So therefore, my mortgage can be maximum $320,000. You said his mortgage is what?
He owes $290,000.
$290,000. So doing it the conventional way, it's still good. He gets to spit out $30,000. Well, he's only in for $53,000.
Correct.
So now he's really only in this deal for $23,000. Not bad for a duplex.
Yes. Now, if he was refinanced, which is great.
Conventionally.
Conventionally.
You have other ways to refinance.
Well, in his case, he has someone lined up who's an investor who wants to get about 10% return on their investment, but they're not going to give him just up to $320,000. They're going to give him up to $350,000.
Nice.
So you get an extra $30,000. Now he's in for nothing on this deal.
Now he's in for nothing, but he is paying 10%, which is nothing. It comes out of.
So he loses his cash flow. His cash flow goes from $6,100 down to $1,000 per year. But he's still getting these. That's the conservative estimation.
So say that again, not just because I like the sound of your voice, but because you're a smart guy. He is going to get, because the bank will only go up to 80%, meaning you have to leave 20% in. A guy like Rav says, hey, I'll lend you another 30. You pay me 10%. I want my $3,000 a year, so on and so forth. So he's going to use the cash flow to do that, but now he's in the deal. Actually, not for zero. He's in the deal for zero, plus he gets to take his wife on a vacation. Right?
$7,000.
So
I'm
people
generally
are
happy with that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So you lose the cash flow, but you're still making money on the appreciation. You're making money on the debt reduction. Somebody paying my mortgage, 2 tenants actually paying down my mortgage.
Here's I think the more important thing. I don't know if they're going on a vacation, but my guess is when they pulled out that $60,000, what are they going to do? They're probably going to put 20% down on another investment, right? And then look to reproduce that as much as they're allowed to do, keeping in line with their mortgage regulations and banking, laws, all that kind of stuff.
That's great. So, we always ask these questions. Number one, the most important question that we should always ask is, what's the return on my investment? Well, if you're willing to put some perspiration in, as we just saw here, then you're able to make over 100%. Actually, it's infinity. Once he refinances, he's in actually for nothing. So, you can make a lot of money. It's one of the best ways to make money in real estate, but there's work involved. Secondly, when do we get that? Well, we get the cash flow monthly.
Yeah.
Or we forgo the cash flow because we want to be in for nothing, and we get it when we sell the property or when we refinance a few years down the road.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
What's the minimum amount needed? Generally speaking, 20% conventionally,
Yep.
but we can also borrow those funds other ways and pay a little bit more. So on and
Yeah.
so forth. I know you teach all sorts of no money deals and all this kind of stuff, and they're not schemes or scams or any Tom Vu on a boat late night TV. This is the real
not at all.
stuff that we do.
Banks
here in
will
Canada.
lend 85%. Will allow up to 85% loan to value on the commercial deals that I'm doing.
Yeah.
Now they're only going to be 75% loan to value, but they'll okay a vendor take back or a second mortgage for another, and I'd have to put down 15%.
Yeah.
But there's no reason why I can't have a partner for that 15%, right?
So let's talk about that, because we were talking earlier that there's people. I look at this and, like I said, either I'm really lazy or I'm really smart. I like to think the latter of the two.
Sure.
I want to hang with my wife and kids. I don't want to do this kind of stuff. Not to say you don't, but you know how to do this. You know how to do this quite quickly. You've got a management team in place. You've been doing it for at least 15 years. If I have $100,000, $200,000, how would that work? I say, Ray, if we're enjoying 153%.
Yeah.
Surely I could make 50, 60, 70% by giving you 100,000, 200,000, and you do the work. This is a typical joint venture, it's called. Explain, how does that work? Explain.
So we know each other, so we're friends. I don't market to the public when we're doing, partnerships and that kind of thing. But if I'm working with someone like you, we've known each other for years, that number is going to be way off in this case because I'm typically putting down 20%.
That's right.
So if we're seeing a 40% return on investment, and we split that 50-50,
I'm happy with 20%.
Sure, you're
doing nothing.
Doing nothing.
Yeah.
On an asset, the risk question comes in. What's your risk? If we're investing in a property that the bank is going to lend on and CMHC is going to insure and give that low interest rate, that tells us a little bit about the security of that investment.
What you're saying is if the Canadian bank is going to lend money on that property, I love this country and I love the banking system. Not always, but they're stingy for a reason. They're smart,
Sure
and they continue to tighten up. If they're going to lend on it, it's probably a safe bet.
Because we're not doing the deal that Bill's doing, and Bill's doing a great deal. But the properties that we would be working on, that property might have 20 units. The bank's not going to lend me the money based on my income or your income. They're going to lend based on the property's ability to pay to service the debt.
That's a great point.
So as a result, that property has enough income to be able to support all the expenses, plus the debt service. They've been doing this for a while, so they understand what that risk is. So when we come in and you put money in, there's not that there's no risk. Could the values of property drop across the country?
Of course.
Absolutely. Anytime we know that, that's a reality that could happen.
Yeah.
The nice thing is, at least when you're dealing with the model that I'm working with, similar to what Bill's doing, is you're having positive cash flow all the way along.
Yeah.
So while the value of the property could drop, it's not the case that rents typically go down. Rents typically go up at the rate of inflation. All your other expenses are there. Your mortgage costs are fixed. So at least you can weather the storm and maintain some decent cash flow on the property until it does come back and appreciate.
Or you refi now, you have no cash flow, but you're still making money on the debt reduction. Somebody's
correct.
paying down your mortgage. The principal is getting larger and larger and larger, which really is the meat of a real estate deal here when you're putting something down such as 5, 10, 20%. You go to the States, sometimes you pay all cash. You're making a lot of money on the inflation and some cash flow. There is not necessarily a mortgage, although a lot of my friends are pulling out 70, even 75% now. But here, the meat of this deal, unless we want to speculate with the inflation, and we should never do that.
But it's nice when we get it.
It's nice when we get it. I call that the dessert of the deal. And I call the cash flow the gravy. But the real meat and potatoes is somebody paying down my mortgage. I would not mind buying a $400,000 property, putting 80 grand down, 20%. 20 years from now, it's worth $400,000.
Didn't go up at all.
I don't care. Because somebody made me $320,000.
And now you
paying down the mortgage.
And now you have all the cash flow. In that case, you wouldn't have any debt service at that point if you paid off the mortgage in that period of time. So there's lots of ways to do this. I personally like to focus on exactly what you're saying. I want to make sure that there's a reasonable amount of cash flow on the property and that we pay down the debt. If we get appreciation, great. Now I've invested in markets like Windsor, or you can look at markets like Hamilton or other markets that have gone up a lot in the past few years. Well, I wasn't investing in them when they're that high. So I've seen really great appreciation, but I'd call that good fortune. I don't know if those markets are up.
That's right.
I don't think anyone knows. I think if you really try and think that you know what's going to happen in a market, you can speculate based on employment and different factors. But in my case, like you, if it didn't go up in value and I'm still getting the cash flow and paying down the mortgage, that's a very good return on my investment. So this might be a good opportunity for us to partner on a deal.
Anytime the government can, yeah, thank you, I would. The government can stop anything. I mean, I don't know what's necessarily, we're going to still see what happens in Vancouver, but as soon as they said, hey, foreign buyers, 15% tax, that might stop the incredible inflation that's been there. So, you are correct. I mean, it's always speculative. We can look at some fundamental factors. We can look at GDP growth and immigration and in-migration, people moving, if there's lots of jobs happening and so on and so forth. But no one has a crystal ball on that. Where we do know we can make money is somebody else paying down our mortgage.
And I think the fact that the rents, even in the United States, when the market's dropped in many places, even 50% in value, rents didn't generally go down. Rents generally stayed about the same or went up because there was a lack of supply. So as a result, if we're in a situation where you might see that all we get is the cash flow and the principal recapture or the mortgage pay down, if that's all we got and you're able to get a 10% return on your money, and I was getting a 10% return on your money, if that's reasonably good returns for what you might expect, these are the kinds of deals that I would focus on. And the reason why is because these properties are valued based on their income, not necessarily based on an end user willing to pay a much higher price to live there. It's only worth what people will pay in rent.
And speaking of based on income, I mean, that's why you kind of stick to the minimum 5-plexes, 6-plexes, so on and so forth, be even larger, because now they look at that. He's bought a 2-plex. This still falls under the residential world. But when we buy 5 and more, is it 5 and above, 6 and above?
Yeah, six and above.
6 and above units. Now we fall into the commercial world. It doesn't matter if Ray, didn't return born on the 4th of July on time, and his credit's terrible. It's based on the income of that dwelling. That's what the bank looks at. Oh, there's an income here. Sure, I'll give you a mortgage at a preferred rate.
Now you might have to you're going to have to personally guarantee that mortgage. So they may look at things like, your overall net worth and some liquidity, but in many cases they're looking for about 25%, of the value of the property or a certain percentage of the mortgage. So if you're looking to get $1 million mortgage on a property, they may want to see that you get $250,000 in net worth somewhere in equity. There are those restrictions.
But what I mean is the other 750 is not necessarily. I mean, they're looking at what's the income going to be, and they would gladly be able to. To
I just want to make sure your viewers know that if they're looking to do this and start out with it, there are some other factors they want to consider. You walk into a lending institution, if the property shows that they can cover, you're pretty much going to get the loan as long as when they look at your personal guarantee, it's adequate.
So where are you borrowing from today? Is it more private, such as outfits like Pro Funds? Is it the Big Five?
I love to work with the Big Five. I love CIBC. They've been very helpful on some things. I work with Royal Bank on stuff. Ultimately, they compete with different rates and different products in different parts of the province and the country. Sometimes you have different institutions will have different appetites. But on the short-term bridge financing, people like Carmen, I work with a lot with private investors as well. I have a large network of people that I can talk to. It's sometimes better to put that private money in first. Just helps us with our loan to value.
Great to have you on the show. You're not just a handsome face. No, not yet. We got your closing thoughts when we come back.
All right.
When we come back, Ray Ostrander and his closing thoughts in this whole world of buy, fix up, refinance, hold, rent out, all that kind of good stuff. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you have any questions pertaining to this show or there's a topic that you'd like covered, please visit www.rogerstv.com. Hey, it's Rav. You've been watching The Everyday Investor. I've been talking to my good friend Ray about how to make money investing in real estate. We've been talking about how to buy, fix up, refinance, rent out, and hold. Great strategy. Sometimes, Ray, people buy, they fix up, and then sell. Although our good friends at CRA sometimes, can take a little bit of money there. Not a bad strategy, but I know you like to hold things for cash flow, so on and so forth. Thank you so much for being on the show. If there's any kind of closing thoughts that you would share with the viewers at home, watching, what would you say to them?
I think for most people when they start into investing, one of the biggest things that they lack is a sense of confidence, and it usually comes from a lack of knowledge. So I think it's great what you're doing here. It's been a pleasure to come out a couple times. Most people when they want to get started, I think if there's one thing that you can do is make sure you find and surround yourself with some good professionals who can assist you with those first couple purchases. Make sure you know what you're doing, because sometimes those first purchases are the ones that can hurt you. If you're looking for some creative financing strategies or some other things, go and get some training somewhere. Rav knows a bunch of people that do that. Something I do as well. Certainly there's lots of value in doing that, and get that first one under your belt.
You're so modest. If people want to learn more about this, I mean, can they contact you to learn to learn more and so on and so forth?
You can contact me at my website. It's ray@rayostrander.com. And
that's great. And it's funny that you said that. I mean, when we don't know what we're doing, that's what makes the headlines, because people get hurt.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I have somebody like you who nurtures me, Ray. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Rev.
For being on the show. Look forward to seeing what's going on next. And I think you're on actually next week on the show as well. I'm going to be helping out a little bit. So a lot of fun. You've been watching The Everyday Investor. On behalf of myself, Rav Toor, and Rogers TV, we'll see you next week. Same place, same time. Honey, I love you. I'll be home soon. Thanks for watching, everyone.